What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Orochimaru kidnapped Fem Sasuke when she was going to marry Naruto? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Once upon a time, in a faraway land there lived a king, called King Fugaku. He was not a kind man but a fair and good ruler nonetheless. But he was worried for he was growing old and had no heir to take the throne. For his firstborn son had died in battle. Then one day the queen happily gave birth to a second child, a princess, and she was given the name Sasuke. But the day was not enjoyed for long, for the queen had passed away giving birth. Still royals and nobles traveled far and wide to greet the little princess of the Sharingan kingdom into the world. One of the many royals was King Yondaime and his son, Prince Naruto. Yondaime and Fugaku were childhood friends and had agreed that if they had children one day they would have their kingdoms united through their children's marriage. Naruto was only 2 years older than Sasuke, so the two kings decided that every summer Sasuke would stay at the Kyuubi kingdom until her 18th birthday when, if the heirs agreed, they would be wedded. But not all were happy with the agreement. Lord Orochimaru was King Fugaku's head advisor and had asked for Sasuke's hand in marriage when she come of age but had been denied. The lord's anger grew when he heard of the agreement to unite the kingdoms and had sown revenge on the king. King Fugaku had got wind of Lord Orochimaru's plans to use his sorcerer to betray the Sharingan kingdom. So on the eve of the lord's betrayal, the king attacked and had stripped the lord of his power, but before Lord Orochimaru could be put to death, he escaped with what little power he had left. Before Orochimaru disappeared he swore to kill the king and to have Sasuke's hand in marriage even if he had to use force. But after a while Orochimaru was forgotten and the people turned their attention to more pressing matters, such as Sasuke and Naruto's first summer together. The common folk of the Kyuubi kingdom were waiting excitedly for the royal ship to arrive with their future queen. But one person was not excited at all. 7-year-old Prince Naruto didn't want to spend his summer with a girl. I bet the first thing she does when she gets off that ship is complain about something or other. Naruto grumbled in his head. Suddenly the common folk started to cheer, for they could see the ship heading for their shores. When the ship reached the dock, King Yondaime dragged Naruto to greet their guests. King Fugaku walked off the ship and onto the dock, greeting the blonde-haired, sapphire-eyed king and prince, with his 5-year-old daughter in his strong arms. "Greetings my old friend, and you too, Prince Naruto. Welcome to the Kyuubi kingdom, my old friend and you young princess." Yondaime greeted back as Fugaku placed the shy girl on the ground. She was very beautiful. Even at this young age anyone could tell she was going to grow into a beautiful and kind lady. Like her mother before her, she had pale smooth skin, big midnight eyes and long straight ebony hair that was like a cretonne of silk. The little princess only looked all the more innocent in her little baby blue and snow-white summer dress. Sasuke looked around at the blonde king and bowed the way she had been taught since she could walk, to be polite, then looked at the blonde prince. Naruto already looked like a smaller version of his father, tanned skin, sapphire eyes that shined with mischief, and hair the color of gold. The first thing Sasuke noticed about Naruto was that he didn't look very happy to see her like the common folk did. In fact, the prince was glaring at her and it was making her feel uneasy around him. Just then, to her distress, she felt her father's strong hands gently push her toward Naruto. While Naruto was also being told to greet her properly. "Go on Naruto, say hello," Yondaime told his son. But Naruto was determined to be stubborn. "No way father. Naruto, go." Yondaime's words left no room for argument. Naruto and Sasuke stood a foot away from each other and Naruto said as if he was going to vomit at every word, "Hello Princess Sasuke, I'm very pleased to meet you." Despite the fact that Naruto obviously didn't mean it, even the 5-year-old girl could tell that, she still bowed and said in her small sweet voice, "Pleased to meet you too, Prince Naruto." Naruto, thinking that his job was finished, stomped back to his father. But upon seeing Yondaime's glared, rolled his blue eyes and turned back to Sasuke and kissed her hand, then ran away looking like he was going to vomit, and Sasuke was wiping her hand on her dress like it was poisoned. The adults couldn't help but laugh at the children. And so the summer went by slowly for the prince and princess. Especially for Sasuke, despite always being polite and kind to the prince, Naruto would always play pranks on her and bully the little princess, with the help of his best friend Lord Kiba. At the end of the summer, when Sasakrieta was finally allowed to return home, she had decided that she would no longer be nice to Naruto. After Sasakrieta went home, Naruto was disappointed that he had not been able to get the little princess to show some backbone. No matter how much he and Kiba had gotten her into trouble or bullied her, she remained nice and polite. But the second summer was much different. Sasakrieta was still polite and kind, just not to Naruto and Kiba. If they played a prank on her, she would prank them back just as bad, if not worse. And if they tried to bully her, she would either kick them on the leg and run away or throw something hard and heavy at them. Naruto was so happy that she was fighting back and had started to respect her by the end of the second summer, not that he would tell anybody that. So each summer Sasakrieta and Naruto would fight like cats and dogs, and the kingdoms began to lose hope that they would agree to marry and unite the kingdoms. Once again it was the beginning of summer, and the common folk of Kyuubi were waiting for the royal ship to arrive with the princess. Yondaime, Naruto, Kiba and Kiba's dog, Akamaru, were also waiting at the dock. It had been 12 years since Sasakrieta's, or Sasuke as she liked to be called, first summer at the Kyuubi kingdom, and Naruto had grown very tall and now had the body of a Greek god. His skin was still sun-kissed tan and his hair was still golden and eyes sapphire blue. Kiba had also grown tall, but not as tall as Naruto, and tanned with chocolate brown hair and hazel eyes, and had red triangles painted on each cheek, as was the tradition of his family. Naruto looked up at the sound of the common folks cheering and saw the royal ship make its way to the dock. Finally, he grumbled out loud. Fugaku was the first to walk off the ship and greet them. "Greetings, old friend, Prince Naruto and Lord Kiba." They all greeted the other. Then when Sasuke didn't walk off the ship, Fugaku turned and yelled, "Sasakrieta, hurry up, girl." Naruto and Kiba sniggered at the use of her full name, knowing the princess hated her full name, but when they looked up at the figure that walked off the ship they gasped. Sasuke walked elegantly up to her father and grumbled, "I told you it's Sasuke." Then she saw the way Naruto and Kiba were staring at her and didn't like it one bit and started glaring at the boys. Well, Sasakrieta, I must say you have grown into a beautiful lady in the past year," Naruto said in a sickly polite voice as he kissed her hand. Sasuke's eye twitched at the use of her full name and the tone of Naruto's voice. "Well, Dobi, I see you are still the pig you are every year." Sasuke glared harder at the prince. "Just because I am more appealing to the eye this year you decide to be polite to me. All men are the same." Fugaku glared at his daughter, then shook his head. But Yondaime and Kiba sniggered at the comment. Yondaime had always liked Sasuke's fiery attitude and how she kept Naruto on his toes. She would be a wonderful queen for the kingdom because she was strong-willed, kind, and if Naruto ever had to leave the kingdom for battle, he would be able to rely on Sasuke to run the kingdom. Kiba also liked Sasuke. It was hard to find girls that had backbone and didn't throw themselves at Naruto. He couldn't help but see Sasuke as a little sister that was fun to irritate. Just as Naruto was about to reply with a rude comment of his own, he saw a white wolf run full speed off the ship and at Sasuke. All the common folk gasped in horror as the wolf tackled Sasuke to the ground. Sasuke yelped in surprise as she hit the ground, the wolf on top of her. Yondaime, Naruto and Kiba drew their swords and were about to attack the wolf when they heard Sasuke giggle and saw that the wolf was licking her face, not ripping it off. "Fang, haha, got, haha, off me," the princess said between giggles and licks. The white wolf soon got off her and sat beside the princess like a loyal dog. Sasuke picked herself up and scratched the white wolf behind the ear, and the wolf gave her a whimper of approval. When she looked up, everyone but Fugaku had a shocked look on his or her face. "What?" After Sasuke explained that Fang was her pet, all the royals, the lord and the wolf and dog made their way to the Kyuubi castle for the welcoming feast. As they were eating, Yondaime decided to make conversation. "So Princess Sasuke, you must tell us how you came to have such an amazing animal?" Everyone at the table looked up at Sasuke, all but her father. Sasuke looked sadly at Fang, who was happily sleeping in front of the fireplace in the dining hall with Akuma. "Well, I found him in the forest near the castle. He was starving, almost too weak to walk and covered in blood. I think that hunters killed his mother. So I took him back to the castle and cleaned him up, then hid the little furball from me for 3 months." Fugaku added, glaring at his daughter. The princess only smiled, looking very proud of herself. Then the princess stood and said, "Please excuse me, but I'm exhausted and wish to retire for the night, good night." Then she left. Fang, noticing that his adopted mother was leaving the room, got up and followed her. Not long after that they all said their good nights and went to bed. The next morning, Naruto awoke to the sound of someone walking past his room. Who was that? It's still too early for the servants to start their duties yet, he thought as he walked to the door to see who it was. The person had already turned the corner, but not before Naruto saw long locks of ebony hair. What is she up to? By the time he reached Sasuke, he could see Fang was with her and could tell where they were heading. Why would she be heading to the gardens this early? When he was about a meter behind her, he said, "Where do you think you're going this early in the morning?" Sasuke jumped and turned around. Fang turned and growled at Naruto. "No, Fang." Sasuke claimed him after she got over her shock. "And for your information, I was letting Fang outside to do his business because I didn't think anyone would approve of him doing it inside," she said to Naruto, and opened the door and let Fang out. It was then that Naruto noticed that Sasuke was only wearing a small black silk nightie that only just went past her slim thighs, showing off her shapely and elegant legs. Naruto felt his manhood twitch in excitement. That nightie isn't very ladylike. Naruto's inner self was drowning and his manhood was hardening with every move she made. "I didn't think anyone would be awoke to see," Sasuke replied, not really caring what Naruto thought. She had just closed the door when she felt a pair of strong arms wrap around her slim waist and warm lips kissed her exposed shoulder. "What are you doing?" she hissed at Naruto. "You just look so yummy," was Naruto's reply before he started to suck Sasuke's shoulder, making her moan. "Stop it, Naruto," was all Sasuke could say before Naruto moved from her shoulder to her elegant long neck, sucking and biting hard, and Sasuke couldn't think straight. Naruto's hands slid up and down her hips and thighs, making her knees go weak. Naruto was about to pick her up and take her to his room to have his way with her, but then Fang started to paw at the door to say he was finished and was ready to come back in. This awoke Sasuke to reality. She turned and kneed Naruto right in the hard-on, making Naruto let her go and fall to the ground in agony. "Touch me like that again and I'll rip it off," she yelled at him, then let Fang in and ran upstairs to her room. After Naruto had recovered, he returned to his room. "It was properly best that she had stopped me. After all, she is meant to stay a virgin until her wedding night, but did she have to knee me? It could cause problems later if she keeps that up," he thought to himself. In her room, Sasuke was leaning with her back against the door, trying to calm down. "That was amazing, stupid Naruto," what was he thinking? "I feel weird between my legs." Down in the dining hall, everyone had started their breakfast, but the princess was missing. Naruto was starting to worry that he had really scared Sasuke with their little scene that morning. "That daughter of mine really needs to learn manners." Fugaku looked angry at his daughter's lateness. Just as the king of Sharingan had finished his sentence, the doors of the dining hall were opened to reveal the princess in a men's white riding shirt, tight cream riding pants and knee-high black riding boots. The fact that the princess was in men's clothes was not unusual in the Kyuubi kingdom, but it was unusual for her to wear them when her father was still at the Kyuubi kingdom. "What do you think you are wearing, young lady?" It was not a question but a demand. "I'm going to go riding after breakfast, so I thought it was wise to wear the right clothes," she replied, like it was that simple, and as far as everyone else in the kingdom cared, it was. Fugaku was about to yell at his daughter when LightInsideMe spoke first. "Calm down, old friend. We are used to Sasuke's odd clothing choice and are not offended." Fugaku glared at LightInsideMe. "You mean that you have been letting my daughter dress like a man?" Sasuke had stared to eat her breakfast, ignoring the kings, when she saw Naruto staring at her. She blushed and quickly looked away. But Naruto continued to stare at her. After a while, Sasuke couldn't take any more of Naruto's staring. "I'm going to go now," she said as she stood, and before anyone could stop her, she had left the hall. Naruto watched her leave. He couldn't stop his eyes from watching her hips sway as she left. LightInsideMe court his son staring, and he felt hope that there was still a chance that the heirs would agree to marry. "Son," getting Naruto's attention, "I believe you have a new horse you wish to try out?" Naruto smiled and left to get change, inwardly thanking his father for the perfect excuse to follow Sasuke. Sasuke was so happy to get away from the castle and riding her white stallion. She couldn't even look the servants in the eye after what she let Naruto do to her. Fang seemed to also be enjoying the outdoors. Sasuke led them to the edge of the Kyubi forest and was about to find the riding track when she heard Fang growl in warning. "What is it, Fang?" Sasuke wasn't going to ignore the wolf's higher senses and was about to turn back, but before she could even get the stallion around, out of nowhere a giant bear bite into her shoulder and rip her off the panicking horse, that ran away, and throw the bleeding princess to the ground and was about to attack her again when Fang went for the bear's throat. "Fang, no!" Sasuke screamed. She knew that Fang couldn't take on a full-grown bear. The bear and wolf started to bite and claw each other, and Fang seemed to be too quick for the bear to take any bad blows, but then the bear's jaw found the white wolf's throat. "No!" she screamed again as she saw her best friend get his throat torn out. Crimson blood splattered everywhere. The bear turned back to the heartbroken and wounded princess. With Fang's blood dripping down its jaw, it ran to attack her again. But before the bear could reach the princess, an arrow shot it in the neck, not killing it but taking its attention away from the wounded princess. Naruto had heard the princess's screams and found a bear about to attack Sasuke and her on the ground, with a wounded and bleeding shoulder and Fang dead on the ground without a throat. It only took Naruto 2 seconds to grab his hunting bow. Most wouldn't be able to kill a bear with a bow and arrow, but Naruto had unbelievable aim and was able to shoot the bear twist in the neck, killing it. After he was sure the beast was dead, he ran as fast as he could to the princess, who had dragged herself over to the dead wolf's body. The wolf's white fur was stained with blood and his golden brown eyes were open wide in shock but looked hollow with death. Sasuke was sobbing uncontrollable, looking down at the wolf. Naruto felt so sorry for her. He knew that as a royal it was hard to find true friendship. He was lucky to have Kiba, but Sasuke had just lost her only companion. He put his large tanned hand on her good shoulder and knelt down behind her to say something comforting, but instead he get his arms fall of Sasuke as she turned and cried onto his broad shoulder. He let her cry for a bit and was going to let her cry for as long as she needed, but when he saw that her shoulder was still letting out a lot of blood, he realized that she was going to bleed to death if she wasn't healed soon. "Sasuke, we have to get you to a healer before you bleed to death," he whispered in her ear as gently as he could. But Sasuke made no move to get up, so Naruto picked her up and carried her to his horse, sitting her in front of him. He made it back to the castle just as Sasuke pasted out from blood lost. The royal healer, Tsunade, was surprised when she heard someone knock on her chamber door so hard that she thought that the heavy wooden door was going to collapse. "Lady Tsunade," she heard Naruto's panicked voice on the other side. "Please open the door, it's an emergency." Tsunade knew that Naruto wouldn't call her lady and not granny unless it was an emergency, so she rushed from her task to the door. Upon opening the heavy door, she saw a worried Naruto holding an unconscious and bleeding Sasuke. The girl looked paler than normal and she was still bleeding freely. Tsunade stepped aside and let Naruto in with his precious bundle. Naruto gently laid Sasuke on the blonde healer's medical table and Tsunade went straight to work in Sasuke's wounded shoulder. "What happened?" she asked, worried when she saw how much blood the princess was losing. Naruto told the blonde healer about the bear attack and the death of the wolf. After Naruto had told Tsunade all he could, the healer sent him outside to wait so he wouldn't be in the way. When Naruto realized that he could no longer just sit around waiting, he went to tell his father and best friend what had happened. King Fugaku would have left that morning to return to his kingdom. After he had told his father and friend, Tsunade walked into Yandaime's study, where they all were. They all looked up at her, fear in their eyes for the princess's well-being. "Do not worry, your majesties," was her response to their looks. "The princess will recover after she rests, but it may be a number of days before she regains consciousness. She lost a lot of blood." That summer was by far the most different, for Naruto and Sasuke actually didn't argue much. Sasuke just didn't have it in her to fight with him because she was mourning the loss of her best friend, and Naruto respected that fact and won't try and cause a fight, much to Sasuke's relief. In fact, Naruto had been a good source of comfort for Sasuke, much to everyone's surprise and happiness. Naruto spent a lot of his time with Sasuke, reading in the library with her and horse riding through the kingdom, or simply just talking to each other. Naruto and Kiba even let her practice combat with them and taught her how to use a sword and bow. She found sword fighting hard because of how heavy the sword was, but she was a nature with a longbow, even outdoing Naruto sometimes. By the time Sasuke had to return home, Naruto had fallen hard for Sasuke and the beautiful princess was beginning to fall for him. As the ship stole Sasuke away from Naruto, he vowed that next summer he would make Sasuke his bride. Sasuke was looking out at the beautiful blue ocean, from the side of the ship, waiting to see the shores of the Kyuubi kingdom. Her long ebony hair flowing wildly in the warm summer breeze, along with her baby blue and white summer dress. After a moment her thoughts were interrupted by her father who appeared at her side. "You actually seem to be looking forward to visiting the Kyuubi kingdom this summer, my dear." Fugaku gave his daughter a questioning look. "Could it be that you have changed your mind about young Prince Naruto? I told you, father, that if the Dobi asks for my hand in marriage like you and King Yondaime had hoped, then I might actually consider it," was Sasuke's only reply as they could now see the shores of the Kyuubi kingdom. When the ship made rest at the dock, and Sasuke walked onto dry land, she was surprised that it wasn't King Yondaime, Naruto and Kiba waiting to greet her and her father but Kakashi, captain of the royal guards and Sasuke's personally bodyguard when she traveled in the Kyuubi kingdom. The captain and Sasuke had become like family. Sasuke loved Kakashi's mysterious but friendly nature and Kakashi loved Sasuke's fiery but kind personality. He looked the same as ever, 3/4 of his face covered with a mask and wild hair that was gray even though he was only 30 years old. "Good afternoon, my lady," Kakashi, from what Sasuke could tell, smiled at her, happy to see the princess that he considered his adopted niece, "and you to your majesty." He bowed to Fugaku to show respect. "What is going on, Kakashi?" Sasuke asked the captain. Kakashi returned his attention to the princess and replied, "Prince Naruto has requested that you are to be taken straight to your chambers and have your ladies-in-waiting help you dress for a surprise that the prince has planned for you." Sasuke looked confused, then looked at her father and saw he was not surprised, and a frown appeared on her beautiful face. "You know what he has planned, don't you, father?" When a smirk showed itself, she added, "And you had a hand in it too, didn't you? Tell me what is going on." "You may take her to the castle now, captain," was the only thing Fugaku said as he mounted a horse and headed for the castle, totally ignoring his daughter's questions and furious glare. "Come along, Sasuke," said Kakashi, acting more causal now that the king had gone, and tried to get Sasuke into a royal carriage, but Sasuke wasn't having it. "Not until you tell me what is going on," she replied, crossing her arms over her chest and pouted. Kakashi sighed. He had really hoped Sasuke would just go along with it, but he knew how much she hated being kept in the dark and had doubted that she would. So with no other choice, the tall men lifted the petite princess up and threw her over his shoulder. Sasuke had never been so shocked before in her life. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Kakashi? Put me down," she yelled at the top of her lunges. Common folk were stopping to stare at the unusual sight. "As you wish," replied Kakashi as he put her in the royal carriage. And before Sasuke could try and escape, Kakashi closed the carriage door and told the driver to go. After much kicking and screaming, 4 ladies-in-waiting and 3 maids finally got Sasuke into a red and black ball gown and had her long hair in a braid that sat over her exposed shoulder with little jewels laced through her hair and a diamond tiara in top of her head. The ladies-in-waiting had agreed that it would be too dangerous to put on makeup because of how non-complaint the princess was being. They managed to get red lipstick on her though. Then after more kicking and screaming, they led the furious and now blindfolded princess to a big wooden door and knocked twice. "Come in," said a deep voice on the after side of the door. The ladies-in-waiting opened the door and pushed the confused, angry and blindfolded princess in. Sasuke went to pull the blindfold off after she heard the door close behind her, but a pair of strong hands gently grabbed her wrists and stopped her. Sasuke could tell by the scent of forest and rain that it was Naruto. "Naruto, what the hell is going on, Udobi?" she asked, hoping to God that she would finally get some answers and even punch the idiot in the nose once she got the stupid blindfold off and could see his face. "How did you know it was me?" was the unintelligent answer. "Because this was your plain surprise and I can smell you," said Sasuke, getting more irritated by the second. "Now let me take off the blindfold so I can strangle you." Sasuke tried to pull her wrists loose, but Naruto wouldn't let her go and only leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "No, wait a little longer. Let me lead you to your surprise." Naruto was pleased to see Sasuke shiver as he whispered in her ear and felt her arms relax. Sasuke couldn't help the shiver that went up her back when Naruto's warm breath touched her ear and decided to let him continue his stupid game. He got this far, might as well let him finish. She felt Naruto move behind her and placed his large warm hands on her smooth exposed shoulders and led her forward. Then Naruto stopped her and she heard curtains being drawn and she felt a warm night breeze. When Naruto started to lead her forward again, she couldn't help but think, is he leading me out a window? This caused Sasuke to dig her heels into the ground and stop Naruto from leading her forward. "What are you doing, Naruto?" she asked. Naruto heard the panic in her voice and saw the way her body tensed, and realized what she must have thought. He was slightly disappointed that Sasuke had such little trust in him but decided that she would one day trust him, he would make sure of it. "Don't worry, I'm not going to push you out a window. It's the balcony." Sasuke at first felt relieved, then stupid. After all, he wouldn't have made her dress up just to throw her out a window and he wouldn't want to cause a war. Then she felt ashamed because of how little she trusted Naruto when Naruto was one of the nicest and most trustworthy people on the earth. "Sorry," she mumbled, ashamed. "It's okay." Sasuke felt Naruto's hands leave her shoulders and felt him loosen the blindfold and take it away. Surprise! Sasuke blinked twice to let her dark eyes adjust, and then she saw a table for two lit by candles in the middle of the balcony, under the starry and full moon-lit night sky. It was a surprise, for Sasuke had no idea that Naruto could come up with something so romantic. Then Sasuke saw a white and gray puppy sleeping on one of the chairs. Naruto saw that Sasuke had seen the puppy and said, "I hope you like your birthday present. Your father told me that you hadn't been able to find another companion after Fang, so I hope you like him." Sasuke was little irritated at Naruto for trying to replace Fang, but she also realized that Naruto wasn't trying to replace Fang but trying to give her another friend because as much as she hated to admit it, she was lonely without Fang and it was time to move on. Sasuke walked over to the little puppy that woke when he heard someone coming closer. From what Sasuke could see, the puppy was still very young, only just old enough to leave his mother. His eyes were deep chocolate brown and he was mainly white with gray paws and tail. Sasuke picked up the little fur ball and hugged him to her chest, not caring that she was getting puppy fur on her dress. The puppy started to lick her dress and neck, making Sasuke giggled. "What's his name?" asked Sasuke, not noticing the jealous look Naruto was giving the puppy. "He hasn't been named yet. He came from one of Akamaru's female friends. He's been breeding like mad this year and Kiba doesn't know what to do with all the pups." Naruto laughed to himself. "Besides, I thought you would like to name him." Sasuke sat down and looked at the cute little puppy in her hands. "I can't decide yet, maybe tomorrow." Naruto nodded and sat down opposite Sasuke and looked at the smile she was giving the puppy, and he could tell that Sasuke was already in love with the furball. "So on to dinner," the blonde prince excitedly said with a big toothy grin. King Yondaime, King Fugaku and Kakashi were all looking at the balcony where the prince and princess were dinning through a window on the far side of the castle and smiled. "So Naruto's popping the question after dinner, right?" asked Fugaku. "Yep," replied Yondaime. "The prince has been planning this for months," added Kakashi. "Here's hoping he doesn't stuff up." Naruto couldn't believe it. Everything was stuffing up. First, he was in the middle of asking Sasuke to marry him when he spilt his burning hot soup into his lap. Then he couldn't find the engagement gift and now Sasuke was starting to talk about retiring for the night. But Naruto had never been the type to give up so easily, so he grabbed Sasuke's hand as she was getting up and got down on his knee and said, "Sasuke, this night has not gone as I had planned, for I have misplaced your gift that was to prove my love for you." At that Sasuke blushed. "But I hope you will still say yes. My beautiful princess, will you do me the honor of marrying me?" Sasuke blinded, and blinded again. "What sort of question is that? You are so stupid." Naruto felt like he was going to die from rejection. "Of course I'll marry you, Dobi," Sasuke said with a smile. It took Naruto a couple of seconds for Sasuke's words to hit home, but when they did, he felt like he was going to faint with relief. Then as payback for tricking him like that, Naruto pulled Sasuke down so she laid on her back on the balcony floor and started to kiss her pale long neck, making her gasp. From the castle window the kings and captains started to do a victory dance. And then realized they had better go separate the teenagers before they started to make babies ahead of time. The whole kingdom was in a frenzy about the wedding. The kings were already making wedding arrangements and Naruto and Sasuke were letting them, so they could spend more time together. But they always had to have a third party with them, their father's orders. So Kiba or Kakashi or both were always with them. Kakashi, being the pervert he was, would have been happy to let the teens go at it if there had not been the risk of Sasuke getting pregnant. Kiba, on the other hand, was always putting a stop to the lip-locking. After all, he saw Naruto as a brother and Sasuke as a little sister, and you don't want to see your sister or brother kissing. Naruto had found the engagement gift. He had left in his room and had given it to Sasuke. Sasuke had loved it the moment she saw it. A silver dragon head necklace with a ruby for the dragon's eyes. Sasuke loved it because it wasn't too fancy. She hated fancy jewelry and she thought that silver was much nicer than gold. Sasuke, do you really have to go? Naruto whined to his lover. They were sitting in Sasuke's chambers. A blonde-haired lady-in-waiting named Ino was in the room, helping the princess fix her hair. Naruto was sitting on the princess's bed, with Sasuke's puppy at his feet. Sasuke had named the puppy Tenchi because he was Sasuke's little angel as far as she was concerned. Yes, Naruto, I must go, replied Sasuke in an irritated voice. And I want to go. It was the last week of summer and King Fugaku would be returning to the Sharingan Kingdom the next morning and would not be returning until the wedding in 4 months. And Sasuke would not be returning with her father, so they had planned a picnic lunch at a river near the kingdom to have some time together before the king left for his kingdom. Well, you'll hurry back, won't you? Naruto asked as Sasuke finished putting on her shows. Of course, Dobi, was her reply as she pecked the blonde on the cheek and turned to leave, but before she could reach the door the blonde prince grabbed her wrist and pulled her back around and kissed her lips hard, making the raven moan in surprise and pleasure. But when the blonde started to pull the raven toward the bed, Ino, who was blushing but had a big smirk on her face, was waiting at the door to escort her. The princess downstairs to the royal carriage cleared her throat loudly to get their attention. Naruto glared at Ino but let go of the dazed Sasuke. After Naruto let Sasuke go, the giggling Ino grabbed the still dazed princess's upper arm and led her down the stairs to the carriage where King Fugaku was already waiting. The picnic was wonderful to Sasuke. She very rarely got to spend time with her father. But when she did, she always made the most of it. Kakashi and 2 other guards were with them. They started to head back to the Kyuubi castle. The sun had almost gone down and it was starting to get dark. Sasuke and Fugaku were sitting in the carriage as they were passing through the forest road that would lead them to the castle. Sasuke had her head resting on Fugaku's shoulder, almost asleep. Sasuke, said Fugaku, getting Sasuke's attention. Yes, father? She asked tidily. Are you? Sasuke looked at her father to show that he had her full attention, but he still seemed uncomfortable about his question. Are you planning to have more than one heir? Sasuke didn't really know how to reply to that. She knew that she would have to have at least one heir for the Kyuubi kingdom. But Naruto and her hadn't really talked about having a big family, but she had her suspicions that Naruto would want a big family, for he loved children. Naruto and I have not really spoken much of children. Why do you ask, Papa? Was her reply. Fugaku's face darkened with sadness. Your mother always wanted lots of children, but after all the trouble she had giving birth to Itachi, the healers said it was too dangerous for her to have another. You mean you knew that if she had me that she would die? Sasuke looked surprised and saddened by the truth. Then why did you let her go through with giving birth to me? She didn't tell me that she was pregnant again. A sad smile came to the king's face. After Itachi died, we both feared I would have to make one of my advisors my heir and let the Uchiha bloodline die, so your mother took matters in her own hands, knowing what would happen. Fugaku looked at his daughter and took her face in his large strong hands. But I do not regret her having you, my dear. You are so much like your mother. With that said, he hugged Sasuke's petite body. Sasuke was beginning to see why her father had asked his question. He feared she would have the same trouble giving birth as her mother and would lose her too. She could see why he feared this. After all, he had already lost his firstborn son and wife, and Sasuke knew that if he were to lose her, he wouldn't recover. Don't worry, father. Sasuke tried to reassure him. I promise you won't lose me before I lose you. If only she had known how true that was. Before could Fugaku reply, the carriage come to a sudden stop. They both looked out the carriage windows and saw that they were still in the forest. What's happening? Asked Sasuke. I don't know. Fugaku replied. Stay here and let me see. he said as he opened the carriage door and got out, closing the door behind him. Sasuke heard her father talking to the guards but couldn't tell what they were saying. Then she heard everything go dead silent. This was when she started to feel nerves. Then she heard an animal of some kind cry in fury, forcing her to yelp in surprise and fear, for the animal seemed to be very close. Then she heard Kakashi scream in pain and heard her father yell with fear laced deep in his voice, "Run, Sasuke, run." But before Sasuke could move, something big hit the side of the carriage, forcing the carriage to fall on its side, with Sasuke landing on her head and shoulder, leaving her head bleeding from a small cut to her forehead and feeling dizzy. She could still hear the screams of pain from the guards and her father's screams for her to run away. As she was about to try and get up, it suddenly went dead silent again. The horrible thought that everyone was dead was making Sasuke even dizzier. Then the silence was broken by the door to the carriage was ripped off its hinges and something long and scaly reached inside and grabbed the scared and dazed princess. Naruto was starting to worry. Sasuke should have been back by now. The sun had gone down hours ago. He and Kiba were sitting in the entrance garden, playing chess by torchlight, with Tenchi and Akamaru playing somewhere in the garden. "If they're not back soon, I'm going looking for them," said Naruto as he tapped his foot impatiently. "I'll come with you," replied Kiba, "but I'm sure they're fine. One of the horses might have slipped a shoe or something like that." "Yeah, maybe, but if you ask me," Naruto never finished his sentence, for the front gate opened to reveal a badly wounded Kakashi. His silver hair was stained with red blood from what looked to be a deep claw mark on his head, and he was holding his bleeding left arm to his chest. His captain armor was missing and his clothes were ripped to shreds, showing the bruises that were forming on his chest. When he limped through the front gate and saw the prince and young lord, he signed and started to clasp. Naruto and Kiba ran to catch him so he wouldn't hurt himself further. They reached him just in time. "Dear God," Kiba ran and get Tsunade. Naruto ordered and Kiba nodded before running to get the blonde healer. After Kiba was gone, Naruto turned back to Kakashi and asked, "What happened, Kakashi? Where is Sasuke?" "I'm so sorry my prince." Naruto could see that Kakashi was having trouble talking, but he had to know where his future wife was. "I couldn't protect her. I tried, but it was too fast. I didn't even see what it was. It knocked me unconscious before I could stop it." Kakashi stopped and started to cough up a little blood but continued, "When I awoke, they were all dead." Naruto felt his heart drop. "My men, dead, and the king, oh God. The king was torn apart, and the princess. I couldn't find her, she was gone, it's all my fault. This was all I could find of her." The captain moved his hand to reveal the silver dragon head necklace but didn't even seem to realize that he was still with his young prince. He seemed to be reliving what he had seen. At the last sentence, Naruto started to feel hope that maybe Sasuke was still alive. "Kakashi, you said this was all you could find Sasuke," he said as he tried to get the wounded man to think. "You didn't see a body, so she might still be alive, right?" I don't know," was the last thing the captain said as he fainted from exhaustion. Without another word, Naruto put the injured men down gently, took the necklace and ran to the stables, knowing that Tsunade and Kiba would be there soon to look after the captain. He grabbed his horse and rode to the gruesome scene. After looking around, Naruto had no luck with finding any sign of Sasuke, but he saw what Kakashi meant when he said that the king had been ripped apart. After seeing the horrid scene, Naruto vowed that he would not rest until he found Sasuke alive. He just knew she was alive. Little did anyone know that in the deepest part of the Kyuubi forest stood the first Kyuubi castle that had been abandoned eons ago when there had been a war. It was still standing strong but was cracking in places, and the wooden tower roofs had long ago worn away, and the still strong bricks were covered in moss, and the gardens were overgrown. But all this only added to the beauty of the old castle. But the lake in the garden was by far the most breathtaking scene in the castle. The blue-green water was full of fish of every color and size. On top of the water were water plants and flowers of every kind, and on shore were old gardens of wild flowers and huge old trees. And little did anyone know that this had been Orochimaru's hideout for years. That night when the sun was almost up, he and his assistant, Kabuto, a clever 22 years old, with long silver hair tied behind his head and glasses over his gray eyes, were making their way to the lake. Kabuto was carrying the unconscious Princess Sasuke in his arms. When she had first woken up, inside the old castle, Orochimaru had told her who he was and she had instantly tried to run away and Orochimaru had to use his magic knock her out. Obviously Fugaku told her about me. Orochimaru thought to himself as Kabuto laid Sasuke down at the lake shore. This means I can't go with plan A of tricking her into loving me, so I'll just have to go with plan B. Kabuto moved away from Sasuke's sleeping form and Orochimaru threw his arms up and his hands started to glow purple. After his hands were covered in the purple magic he aimed them in Sasuke's direction. The purple magic flowed at Sasuke and covered her whole body. After a moment the glow disappeared and Sasuke began to wake. When she looked around and saw Orochimaru, she jumped to her feet and started to run away but Kabuto was quick to catch her by the waist and forced her to face Orochimaru. Really, my dear, you shouldn't try to run away before you see the surprise I have planned for you. Smirked Orochimaru. Sasuke, while still fighting Kabuto's hold, replied, Orochimaru, what do you want from me? Your father's kingdom. Orochimaru replied simply as Kabuto released Sasuke but made sure to stay close. Well then take it. Sasuke's anger grew, you have enough power to do that. Sasuke knew she shouldn't be just letting Orochimaru take the kingdom. But she knew she couldn't stop him either and she just wanted to get back to Naruto. No, that didn't work very well the first time I tried it. You see, if you steal something you spend your whole life fighting to keep it. But Orochimaru waved his magic and the lake changed into the inside of a church and people were bowing to them. Sasuke's plain dark blue dress turned into a big white wedding dress and Orochimaru's black robes turned into royal clothing of a king. Sasuke didn't like where this was going at all. But it was beginning to make sense. If I marry the only heir to the throne, the kingdom will be rightfully mine and no one will be able to say otherwise. Well, Sasuke couldn't believe that the bastard would have the nerve to even think that she would have any part in this. You really think I would go along with this? Of course not, replied Orochimaru knowingly, and that's why I placed a spell on you. Sasuke felt cold fear ran through her. What spell? Orochimaru's evil smirk only served to increase her fear. You'll see when the moonlight leaves the lake, he said as he looked over her shoulder. Sasuke turned just in time to see the moonlight leave the lake. At first Sasuke didn't feel anything, then she saw her body started to glow purple and she felt it begin to change. From the other side of the lake two little creatures were drowned to the purple light and saw a beautiful maiden covered in purple light turn into a beautiful black swan. They felt sad for the maiden, for they too were really humans trapped in the forms of a turtle and a frog. Even from their side of the lake they could hear the swan's sad, anger cry and Orochimaru's laughter. Back at the Kyuubi kingdom, Naruto and Kiba were riding back to the castle after a long day's ride through the forest, trying to find clues of where Sasuke might be. They had searched the forests around the kingdom for almost a week now. Naruto was beside himself with worry but he would not let anyone, including himself, make him believe that Sasuke was dead. Do you know how Kakashi is doing? Kiba asked Naruto as they reached the castle wall. They were planning on visiting the wounded captain to see if he could remember anything else about that night. Only that he will live to fight another day, replied Naruto. Dad has been so worried about him, not that I blame him, Kakashi is like a son to Dad. After all, Dad was Kakashi's teacher in the ways of fighting like a warrior since before I was born. Then Naruto smirked to himself. But I also hear that the captain has been enjoying many visits from Iruka. Kiba looked shocked. You mean your lecture teacher, Iruka? At Naruto's nod, Kiba smirked as well. I never would have imagined. When the horses were handed over to the stable hands, the young prince and lord climbed up the stairs to the healer's tower. When they reached the door that led to Kakashi's chambers they didn't even get to knock before they heard giggling and some breathless moaning. Naruto and Kiba looked at each other in shock then made disgusted faces at each other. Then Naruto knocked as loud as he could. They heard frantic movement inside the room, followed by a breathless, "Come in." Opening the door, the boys saw a happy-looking Kakashi sitting up in a bed and a flushed and breathless-looking Iruka sitting next to the bed with his brown hair pulled loose from its normally tight ponytail and a love bite forming on his neck. Sorry if we are interrupting something. Naruto gave them a knowing smirk that made Kakashi smirk back from under his mask and made Iruka blush the color of a tomato. But we were wondering if you could remember anything new, Kakashi? Or was your mind too occupied with putting your tuft down Iruka's throat? Prince Naruto. Iruka looked shocked at the prince's boldness. But Kakashi only chuckled before turning serious and said, "Actually, my prince, I do remember something. That night when you and Kiba found me, I called the monster an id, but really I should have said him. But I thought you said it moved too quickly for you to see it, so how do you know it was a him?" Kiba asked, not really sure he wanted to know the answer. Before he attacked, the monster was in the form of a man. They all looked at Kakashi like he had grown another head. "Don't look at me like that. There was a man standing at the end of the road, which was why we stopped in the first place. Then suddenly there was a green light and we were attacked." "What was this creature?" asked Iruka. "A sorcerer." They all turned to see LightInsideMe walk into the room, looking like everything made sense to him now. "How do you know that, father?" asked Naruto with hope that his father may have figured out where Sasuke is. "Because there is only one man I know that can change forms like that and would kill Fugaku and take Sasuke. Fugaku and I feared something like this would happen one day," LightInsideMe said sadly. "His name is Orochimaru and he used to be one of Fugaku's chief advisors. He was a powerful man, and one that was used to getting what he wanted, and what he wanted was the Sharingan Kingdom, and Fugaku had made him his heir when Prince Itachi died, but then Princess Sasuke was born, but Orochimaru only seemed to think of the princess as a bonus with taking the throne and just asked for Sasuke's hand, but Fugaku had already promised Sasuke to you, Naruto. So Orochimaru planned to betray Fugaku and take the throne by force, but Fugaku found out and was going to put Orochimaru to death, but Orochimaru escaped and was rumored to have vowed that someday he would get the kingdom and Sasuke." Naruto looked even more worried now. After all, Sasuke was kidnapped by a crazy old sorcerer that could be doing anything to her. "Do you have any idea where this Orochimaru might be, father?" LightInsideMe shook his head sadly. "Nobody has seen any sign of the old snake before the night Sasuke went missing." Naruto felt his heart drop, but he wasn't going to give up on Sasuke now. He knew someone that could help find this Orochimaru guy, his cousin Gaara. Back at the lake, Sasuke been living at the lake for a week now, and she had made friends with the frog and turtle that were right now sitting in a little area between the lake and the castle moat, with the frog planning on getting his human body back and the turtle simply waiting for Sasuke, who had gone to bath in the lake, to return. "Sai, you have come up with some really stupid ideas, but this one tops it," the gray and green turtle said in a tone that clearly said you are an idiot as he looked up at the night sky, watching the dark clouds pass. "Shut up, Shikamaru," replied the blackish-green frog, as he tied long sticks together with weed. "You'll see, when I get her to kiss me, you'll change to a prince." Shikamaru rolled his dark eyes. He had heard it a million times. I know, you keep telling me. I just don't see why you can't just give Sasuke these flowers." Shikamaru pointed to a group of white lilies. "Really, Shikamaru, you know nothing of romance. To give her those flowers would be too easy." "No, I most get those," Sai replied, pointing to some yellow lilies on the other side of the castle moat, which had 2 hungry crocodiles swimming in it. "Troublesome," Shikamaru mumbled to himself. "Once she sees that I have risked my life to get her a gift, the kissing will not stop." Sai continued as he got up a tree and prepared to pole bolt over the moat. "Well, Sai, not to ruin your brilliant plan, but you see the problem with it, right?" Shikamaru knew that he should have stopped the stupid frog, but being a turtle meant that he couldn't move very fast, and to stop Sai he would really have to grab him and hold him down. "There is no problem. I've thought it all through," he insisted. As he was about to jump, Shikamaru added, "Oh, so you did think of a way back over here that didn't involve you swimming with the crocs?" Sai's eyes went wide. He hadn't thought of that. But it was too late to stop as the stick sent him over the moat and the crocodiles took a bite at him. The tied-together sticks sent Sai back and forth from safety to danger, and Shikamaru tried to help but couldn't get a hold of the frog or the sticks, for they were moving too fast, and "I told you so" look on his face the whole time. Sai continued to scream even after someone grabbed the sticks and held him on the land. When Sai finally realized that he had stopped swinging, he looked up to see Sasuke in her human form, being knight and all, holding the sticks. He blushed bright pink. "What on earth are you doing, Sai?" she asked, and gave him the "you're an idiot" look. As Sai set his feet on solid ground again, he said in the manliest voice he could master, "I was trying to get those flowers for you." He pointed to the yellow lilies. Sasuke raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why didn't you just give me these lilies?" and pointed to the white flowers. "I would have liked them more." Shikamaru gave Sai the "I told you so" look and once again mumbled, "Troublesome." Sai just looked like he was going to cry. I was only trying to make you feel better. And trying to get a kiss along with that? Sasuke knew what this was about. The frog had been trying to get a kiss from her since she got there. Sai tried to look like he didn't know what Sasuke was talking about but failed. You know that even if I did kiss you, you wouldn't turn back into a human. Sasuke felt like if she had to say this one more time she would kill the frog. You have to be kissed by someone that loves you. Which is why Orochimaru put that curse on you in the first place. Shikamaru said with a smirk. You'd be lucky to find someone that loves you more than you. Sasuke tried to hold back her laughter but just couldn't and started to laugh with Shikamaru. Well, excuse me for trying to turn back into a prince, but some of us want to return home, you stupid turtle. At least I have a chance of turning back into human. The moment Sai said it he wished he could take it back. Shikamaru stopped laughing and looked like the world had come crushing down on him. To break Sai's curse he needed to be kissed by a lover. Sasuke needed Naruto to prove his love for her to the whole kingdom. But the only way to break Shikamaru's curse is for Orochimaru to be murdered. And with how powerful he is, that was very unlikely to happen. Sasuke hit him across the head for being so insensitive. Then picked up Shikamaru and hugged him to her chest. Don't worry, you will be human again, Shikamaru, I know it. Shikamaru smiled lazily up at her to show his thanks, then made himself comfortable and fell asleep. Sasuke was used to having her new friends sleep on her lap as she leaned against a tree trunk. She knew it gave them comfort. After they were all comfortable, they all fell asleep and dreamed of a happy future. Sasuke didn't know how long she'd been asleep for, but she awoke to the faint sounds of someone in pain. Seeing Sai and Shikamaru still sleeping soundly on her lap, she gently put them on the ground, careful not to woke them, and went to see what was going on. After walking deeper into the gardens, she saw a purple light and heard someone yelling, "What are you doing to me, you bastard?" Sasuke, who was hiding behind a bush, saw a man about Naruto's age being turned into a bird by Kabuto. The man's long chocolate brown hair turned into brown feathers along with his silver armor. Before his arms turned into wings, Sasuke saw an arrow had been shot into his left arm. Kabuto gave an evil chuckle as he practiced his magic. The young man gave a scream of agony and Sasuke winced as she heard his bones painfully change and reform themselves. When the transformation was finished, Sasuke saw that the young man was now a duck and that he had passed out from the pain. Kabuto, who seemed satisfied with his work, started to walk back to the castle. After Kabuto was gone, Sasuke climbed out of her hiding spot, ran over to the human-turned duck and gently picked him up and ran back to the lake. Sai and Shikamaru awake to find Sasuke running over to them with a wounded duck in her arms. Troublesome. What's going on, Sasuke? Sai asked, eyeing the duck in her arms. We have a new party member, she replied as she gently laid the injured animal on the ground and started to look over his injuries. Kabuto must have found him in the forest and decided to use him for practice. Poor guy. Shikamaru looked at the arrow in the bird's wing. He must be in a lot of pain. Sasuke agreed. I need you guys to hold him down, so I can get the arrow out. Shikamaru laid his turtle body over the duck's, being careful not to put all his weight on the bird, hoping the dark night would hide his blush. While Sai held the duck's head in place. Ready, said Shikamaru. Because the arrow was all the way through the wing, Sasuke just broke the feathered end off the arrow and then gently pulled the other end out the other side. The duck tried to move as Sasuke was pulling the arrow out. After Sasuke got the arrow out, she ripped off the sleeves of her dark blue dress and used them to bandage the wing. Okay, you can get off him now. After the turtle and frog got off the duck, Sai couldn't help himself. He started to try and wake the poor bird, and before Sasuke or Shikamaru could stop him, the duck jumped up and started to attack the frog by biting him, obviously still thinking that he was in danger. Who are you? The duck demanded. What did you do to me? Please calm down, Sasuke said calmly and grabbed the frog, holding him safe to her chest. I'm Princess Sasuke. The duck yelled the moment he saw Sasuke and tried to bow, though it was obviously hard to do as a duck. My lady, we have been looking everywhere for you. My name is Neji Hyuga, one of the many that have been searching for you with the prince. Sasuke realized that he must have been one of Kyuubi's royal guards. And Sasuke's face brightened as she realized that Naruto was still looking for her, like she had hoped. Then she felt dread. Did father and Kakashi survive the attack the night I was taken? Orochimaru wouldn't tell her what happened that night. Neji's face darkened with sadness and Sasuke felt her heart grow cold. Captain Kakashi was injured but will recover soon, but I'm afraid that the king was murdered. Sasuke started to break down. Her hands covered her face as she felt the tears force their way out and felt her heart drop into her stomach. Had she not already been sitting, she would have fallen to her knees. She had thought that her father may have been murdered that night, but to have it confirmed was different than not being sure. Her friends didn't say anything. What could they say, but they did try to comfort the heartbroken princess by hugging her as best they could as animals and let her cry on their shoulders. After an hour or so, Sasuke was almost out of tears to cry and would have fallen asleep had Orochimaru not decided to come and talk to her before the night was gone like he did every couple of nights. The moment Sasuke saw him walking toward her, she felt her rage blind her and she charged at him, not caring that not only could his magic kill her in an instant but also he was physically stronger than her. "You bastard!" she screamed, more tears falling down her cheeks as she punched the pale man's chest. "You killed him. You killed my papa." Orochimaru looked shocked at first but soon got over it and grabbed Sasuke's slim wrists in one hand to stop her slightly painful punches and said in an irritated voice, "How did you find out?" Sasuke, who was struggling to get her wrists free, only replied by spiting in Orochimaru's face. That was it. Orochimaru was pissed. Sasuke's refusals to marry him the past week had angered him to no end, and now that she had this bite of information it was going to be even harder to get her to agree. Orochimaru was so angry that with his free hand he slapped Sasuke hard across the face. The sounds of skin hitting skin followed by the gasps of the other animals were all that was heard for a moment. Sasuke was in shock. She had never been hit before and the force of the slap had made her feel like her face was about to explode and left her ears ringing. Then she felt another slap, this one even harder than the one before, making her yelp in pain, and she felt warm blood begin to fall down her chin from her lip splitting. "Are you happy now?" Orochimaru yelled in her face. Then as suddenly as the anger appeared, it disappeared and the golden-eyed man said calmly, "I will not ask you for your hand tonight, but in 3 nights' time I will ask you again, and if you still refuse..." Orochimaru used his free hand to force Sasuke to look at her shocked friends. "I'll kill them, one by one." With that he let go of the princess's wrists, letting her fall to the ground, as her legs seemed to be unable to hold her. "Remember, in 3 nights," he said as he walked away. Sasuke just continued to lay in the grass, sobbing uncontrollable. Her animal friends ran to her side and tried to help her back up. After the animals had Sasuke in a sitting position, they could see the bruising and swelling forming on her face and the warm crimson blood falling down her chin, but the worst was her eyes, for you could see all her mental and physical pain shining in them. "My lady, please don't give up hope. The prince is coming, he will find you and kill that horrible man, for even touching you in such a way." Neji tried to reassure her. Sasuke was about to reply, but then she felt more, then saw the sun beginning to rise. As her body began to glow purple, she got to her feet and walked to the lake, stepping in the cool water just as she finished transforming. The animals stood in silence and watched, but Neji was only silent because he was shocked. "The princess," he gasped. The black swim only lowered her head and made sad, mournful noises. "So let me get this straight," Kiba said, doubt laced in his voice. "We are going to visit your cousins, Gaara and Temari, to ask Gaara to help us find Sasuke because he can track magic by using magic sand." Naruto just shook his head and decided to give up on trying to explain it to his best friend. He, Kiba, and after much pleading and begging, Kakashi were all riding along a forest path in a little forest not far from the Kyuubi kingdom. With Akamaru and Tenchi walking alongside the horses. Kakashi, seeing the prince give up, answered the question. Lord Gaara is a well-known demon tracker. He was given the power to control sand by a powerful demon that saw Gaara as a friend. Lord Gaara can use his sand to track magic, and if he can track Orochimaru's magic, maybe it will lead us to Sasuke. And Lady Temari is a wind witch, who is more like Gaara's guard than big sister. Kiba still seemed to be a little unsure, but before he could ask another question, Naruto stopped and signaled for the others to stop too. Kiba was about to ask what was wrong, but then he saw two cloaked figures on the road ahead. One had a large clay urn strapped to his back and the other, a girl from what he could tell, had an oversized fan strapped to hers. Naruto dismounted and walked toward the figures. When Naruto was but a couple of feet away, The cloaked figures lowered their hoods. The boy had blood-red hair, pale skin, eyes of emerald green and the symbol of love tattooed on his forehead. The girl had dusty blonde hair, tied it in 4 ponytails and blue eyes. Both looked about Naruto's age. "It's been a long time, cousin," the redhead said. His voice was cold and emotionless, yet warmth shinned in his green eyes. Naruto being Naruto, he just smiled and hugged Gaara and Temari at the same time, yelling at the top of his lungs, "It's so good to see you again, cousins." After Naruto had finished hugging the redhead and blonde, his face turned serious. "I am in dire need of your help, Gaara." Gaara nodded. "I heard of what happened to Princess Sasuke and have been waiting for you to come see me. I'm ready to begin the hunt when you are." Naruto nodded and said with a smile, "Right, let's go then." Later that afternoon, back at the lake, Sasuke had decided that she was not going to just sit around and wait for Orochimaru to kill her friends. They had to come up with a plan, but first she had to fill Neji in on her curse. "So what you're saying is that whenever the moonlight leaves this lake, you turn into this?" Neji said as he swam next to Sasuke. "Right, the following night if I've to turn back into a human I have to be on the lake," said Sasuke, then added, "And the only way to break the curse is for Naruto to prove his love for me to his kingdom." Shikamaru started to giggle. All she needs is for Naruto to prove his love. Poor Sai has to get someone to fall in love with him. I can see which one is easier. Sai, who had been sitting on Shikamaru's shell as he floated on the other side of Sasuke on the lake, glared at the turtle. "And what about you?" Neji asked the turtle. "How do we change you back?" Shikamaru's face darkened and he started to swim away. Sai hopped into Sasuke's back, knowing that his friend needed some alone time. "Was it something I said?" Neji's silver eyes saddened. "I didn't mean to upset him." "We know," Sasuke reassured the duck. "Shikamaru can only be turned back if Orochimaru is murdered, and with how powerful he is that is not very likely to happen." Neji nodded his head in understanding, then it suddenly hit him. "What about me? How do I break the curse on me?" "Don't worry, Kabuto was the one that cursed you and his magic isn't strong enough to last more than a week, lucky bastard," Sai said bitterly. Relief washed over Neji. "Hey guys," Shikamaru yelled as he swam back to the group, obviously over his self-pity, "I think I have a plan." They all looked at him with hope in their eyes. "Neji, do you remember the way back to the Kyuubi castle?" "Yeah," Neji nodded. "Due north." "Why? How long would it take to get there if you flew?" "Well, I don't know, I've never flown there before, but I'd say about 2 hours at most." "Right, it's about 5 hours to dusk." Shikamaru started to mumble to himself. The others could see that he was going through his plan in his head. "Okay, here's what we do. Neji, you and Sasuke fly to Naruto, lead him back here by nightfall. He sees Sasuke change back into herself, then we can tell him about the curse and he can find a way to prove his love for you to the kingdom." Shikamaru smiled at his plan, and then started to blush for Swan. Sasuke kissed him. Sai looked like he was going to cry. "Come on Neji, let's go." Sasuke spread her wings and started to fly north, Neji right behind her. "Good luck, guys," Shikamaru yelled at them. "If you let anything happen to her I'll cook you alive, duck boy." Sai yelled at Neji just as they were out of hearing range. Gaara pulled at his horse's reins, halting the horse. He heard his companies halt behind him also. "This is where she was taken?" he asked them, looking around the forest path. "Yeah," Naruto nodded. "It's been over a week though. Do you think you can still track the sorcerer after that long?" Gaara looked at his blonde cousin and saw the hope shining in his sapphire blue eyes. "Most likely." The redhead dismounted and reached over his shoulder and opened the urn. After the lid was removed, sand began to pour out and wrap itself around Gaara's body, as if it had a mind of its own. "Find him," Gaara ordered, and the sand began to move all over the area as if it was some kind of sniffer dog. After a moment the sand returned to Gaara and Gaara turned to the other and said, "We've found his track. Dismount, we will travel by foot. And everyone keep your eyes open. This sorcerer is powerful and may be able to change into any animal form." The others got off their horses and started to walk behind Gaara, keeping an eye out for any animals acting odd. After a while Kiba signed, "I wish Akamaru was here, he'd be able to tell if the animal was an animal or not." Akamaru and Tenchi had been sent back to the castle with Kakashi. Kakashi needed his bandages changed and he knew that Tsunade and Iruka would kill him if he got his healing injuries infected. Suddenly Gaara stopped. "What is it, brother?" Temari asked, reaching for her fan. "Did you lose the track?" Naruto asked, seriously hopping not. "No," Gaara looked slightly confused. "The old magic signature is still here, but a new one very similar is almost above us." Neji and Sasuke were over halfway to the Kyuubi castle. Neji was flying happily thinking to himself, while Sasuke was looking down at the forest below. "We'd better keep an eye out for hunters." Neji was about to reply when an arrow almost hit him in the wing without a wound. "Bloody hell, the other is only just closing, you winkers," he yelled down at the ground. Sasuke, however, was looking at the arrow that had now started to fall back to earth. It had golden feathers, and only Naruto's arrows had golden feathers, for most hunters had brown or black. "Naruto's here," she cried happily and started toward the ground, but Neji flew in front of her. "No, Sasuke, he is hunting and he will only see you as game. Stick to the plan," Neji said, trying to get Sasuke back on track, but all Sasuke could think about was seeing Naruto again. Neji started to use his body to try and push Sasuke back, but Sasuke, being the bigger bird, simply knocked Neji aside and flew full speed toward where the arrow came from. "Sasuke, come back." Neji frantically flew after her. On the ground, Naruto, Gaara, Temari and Kiba were all looking up, trying to see past the thick treetops, to see if the arrow Naruto sent up had caused Orochimaru to come at them so they could kill him. "It worked, he's coming closer," Gaara said as they all readied their weapons. As Sasuke broke through the thick treetops, she saw all four of them with their weapons ready. She wouldn't have moved in time to avoid all the weapons had Neji not swooped down and knocked her out of harm's way. "Come on, Sasuke," Neji ordered the shocked Swan. The two water birds heard a frustrated, "Damn it," from the blonde prince as they flew away. Sasuke twisted her long swan neck to see Kiba and the blonde woman following behind them. "Where is Naruto and the redhead?" she asked in cold fear. She had seen Naruto hunt before and knew that once he had his eyes on his prey, he wouldn't just let it go without a fight. So if he wasn't behind them, it must mean her blonde has a trap set up. "Neji, we need to fly higher. We need get out of arrow range." Neji just looked at Sasuke like she had lost her mind, "But if we go higher they'll lose us." Just as the duck finished the sentence, they both looked ahead and saw a net that looked to be made of sand. They would have easily avoided it, but a powerful wind suddenly threw them forward toward the net. Neji was able to stay out of the way, but Sasuke was thrown into the net. The sand net wrapped itself around the black swan, making sure that she couldn't escape. "Neji, help!" Sasuke cried out in alarm, as the sand net took her toward the ground. Neji followed and tried to break the net, but it was no use. When they were in view of the forest floor, they could see the four humans. Neji made sure that he stayed out of sight and waited for the right moment to strike. "You got him, Gaara," Naruto yelled happily as he watched the struggling Swan be lowered to the ground. "Hey, I helped too, you know," Temari said as she put her hands on her hips. "Yeah, you created a strong wind," Kiba said, unimpressed. Temari whacked the dog lover over the head with her large fan. "I'd like to see you do it, dog boy." As the wind witch and the dog lover argued, Gaara was twisting the sand net into a sand cage. Neji, seeing this, realized that the redhead was the one controlling the sand and was about to attack the attractive human when stabbing red-hot pain covered his body. Then as suddenly as it come, it was gone again. Side effects of Kabuto's magic. Gaara looked up as he felt a power source weaken then strengthen again. Then suddenly a brown and white duck with silver eyes flew from the treetops and attacked him. His sand instinctively coming to his aid, freeing the trapped swan. Naruto dived for the now free bird, but the swan only bit him on the nose and flew away with the duck close behind. Temari waved her fan and tried to trap them in her wind, but they were out of her magic range. "Come on, after them," Naruto yelled as he ran after them again, the others following close behind. The sun was almost gone and Shikamaru and Sai were on a hill near the lake, keeping an eye out for their friends. "They should be back soon," Shikamaru said with slight worry. "That's if that duck didn't get them lost," Sai whispered to himself. "There," Shikamaru shouted as he saw two birds flying toward them fast. "Thank God they made it, worrying is so troublesome." Sasuke and Neji landed next to the turtle and frog, and all four of the animals saw the four humans running into the old castle gardens, looking around in wonder. Seeing the hunters stop on the other side of the lake, Sasuke and Neji were safe for the moment. Sasuke, it's time, look. Shikamaru pointed to what was left moon now shining over the lake. Right, wish me luck, she said and then added. The baka better not shoot me before I get my hands on him for trying to kill me. With that she spread her large black wings and glided elegantly down the hill toward the lake. Naruto, seeing the swan coming toward the lake, got over his shock of finding the beautiful garden and readied an arrow. But Gaara stopped him by placing a hand on his shoulder. What? Asked the blonde in frustration. The magic is weakened, that is not the sorcerer you are hunting. It is someone the sorcerer used his magic on, that's why the magic signature was the same. Naruto withdrew his arrow and watched in shock as the swan landed gracefully in the lake and started to glow and change form. When the purple glow was gone, Naruto almost fainted when he saw whom he had been about to kill. Sasuke, he gasped and then ran toward her, not caring about the water getting in his boots, and pulled her petite body against his and started kissing her passionately. Sasuke moaned, as she tasted Naruto's mouth and felt his tongue dive past her lips. Sasuke would have been happy to continue to make out, but no, Orochimaru's wards had been set off the moment the Sand User and Wind Witch entered the garden, so the snake would be there soon. So sadly she ended the kiss, but happily getting her payback for making the attempt on her life. She stopped the kiss by digging her heel into Naruto's foot. Naruto jumped back and yelped, looking at Sasuke with eyes that silently asked, "What did I do to deserve that? Don't you look at me like that," Sasuke said, pretending to be angry, but really she couldn't have been happier at that moment. "You tried to kill me, Dobi, that was your payback." From behind him, Naruto heard Kiba and Temari trying to contain their laughter. "But I didn't know it was you." He whined like a child that had just been told they couldn't have dessert. Then he noticed the bruising on Sasuke's face and felt anger take over. "Sasuke, did Orochimaru give you those bruises?" Sasuke touched her cheek and nodded. Naruto was about to say more, but Sasuke interrupted. "Naruto, there is no time, you have to listen to me. Orochimaru will be here soon, and if he catches you here he'll kill you. Let him try, he won't get away with hitting you. Then after I've killed the bastard I'm taking you home." The blonde said as he grabbed Sasuke's hand and tried to lead her away, but Sasuke just shook her head. "You can't kill him, he's too strong and I can't leave. When the moon leaves this lake I'll turn back into a swan, and I need to be on the lake when the moon returns to turn back into a human. All curses can be broken, how do we break your curse?" Gaara asked. Naruto looked at Sasuke with hope in his eyes. "The only way to break the curse is for you to prove your love for me to the whole kingdom," said Sasuke as she pointed to Naruto. "How do I prove it to the whole kingdom?" Naruto asked. Sasuke smiled, for she knew that look on her blonde Dobi's face. It was a look of pure determination, and when Naruto got that look you knew there would be no stopping him. "I don't know. I think I know a way." Sasuke turned to see Shikamaru, Sai and Neji swimming toward them. "Holy crap, that turtle just spoke." Kiba yelled, looking like he was freaking out, with Naruto not far behind, and Gaara and Temari just stood there looking very unaffected. "You didn't think I was the only one cursed, did you?" The blonde and brunette nodded. "No, they were humans too." "Shut up, we don't have time for this, that bastard will be here soon." Shikamaru yelled to get their attention. "You, the redhead, you have magic, can you perform a love bond vow?" Everyone knew that a love bond vow was a spell that when performed simply meant that the people would be together forever. It was more like a blessing than anything. Gaara just nodded in reply. "Then all you need to do is get all your people together and have the love bond vow performed on you and Sasuke. With the kingdom witnessing this, no one will be able to say you don't love each other." Shikamaru explained to Naruto, who looked happier after each word. "Tomorrow night I'll throw a ball and have the whole kingdom there," Naruto said, looking proud of himself. Sasuke hugged Naruto one last time before she started to tell him to hurry and leave. "I'll send Kiba to get you tomorrow night," Naruto said as he placed one last kiss on Sasuke's forehead and turned to leave, but stopped after taking 2 steps and turned back to Sasuke. "Here, Sasuke," he said as he threw something at her. Sasuke courted and saw that it was the silver dragon necklace he had given her. She smiled at him and held the necklace close to her heart. "Hurry up, Naruto," Kiba cried from up ahead. And Naruto waved one last time and was gone. The moment Naruto was out of sight, Orochimaru showed up. "What are you doing here? You said I had 3 nights, not 1. Sasuke said angrily, pretending to not know why he would be down by the lake. My wards were breached, he said, eyeing the princess, but you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Why would I? Sasuke went to walk away, but suddenly Orochimaru grabbed her wrist and forced the hand that was clenching the necklace open and took the necklace from her. You would, because it was your precious Naruto that breached them. Orochimaru smiled as he twisted Sasuke's delicate wrist painful, making the princess hiss in pain and glare at him. By the way, your plan won't work, because you won't be able to attend the big ball tomorrow night. Sasuke glared harder, daring him to try and stop her from going. If you want to stop me, you'll have to kill me. Orochimaru twisted the delicate wrist harder and Sasuke cried out and fell to her knees. No, that won't be necessary, he hissed in her ear. You see, you forget one important thing about tomorrow night. There is no moon. Sasuke looked up at the moon and saw that Orochimaru was right. The moon was almost gone. Tears started to fall down her swollen and bruised cheeks. Then after Orochimaru finished his little victory laugh, he waved his hands and green magic started to wrap around Sasuke's petite body, holding her arms to her chest. Then the magic turned into heavy chains, chaining her arms to her body. Then a collar and leash formed around her long pale neck and Orochimaru started to pull her to her feet by the leash and forced the struggling princess toward the old castle. Neji, Sai and Shikamaru could only watch in horror as their friend was forced away. Orochimaru stormed into the old ballroom of the abandoned castle with Kabuto walking calmly behind him. That girl seriously doesn't know when to just give up, he yelled angrily, releasing his anger by blowing a hole in the wall with an energy ball. He had just left the princess chained and gagged in the dungeon after getting sick of her back chatting and refusals to marry him. Even after knocking her around with his fists and using torture spells on her, she still refused. She isn't going to marry you, is she? Kabuto said as he looked at his master's handiwork. We needed to replace that wall anyway. This is becoming more trouble than it's worth. It would be easier to just take the Sharingan kingdom by force. Orochimaru was saying to himself. So just kill the bitch and be done with it. Kabuto said, looking bored. Orochimaru thought about this for a moment and then smirked. No, I won't just kill her, I'll make her suffer for not agreeing to marry me. By using that Kyuubi brat's vow against her. How? Kabuto asked. Even if Naruto had made a normal vow of love in front of his whole kingdom, my curse would have been broken, but if Naruto confesses his love to another, the curse would slowly drain little Sasuke's life away. He said, as his smirk grew wider. But how would you get Naruto to confess his love to another? Kabuto asked. Orochimaru held up the silver necklace and said, by making you look like Sasuke. Kabuto looked horrified at the thought of being turned into a girl but knew better than to go against his master's wishes. But the sand user will sense that I'm not the princess. Not if I put a strong spell on this necklace that will stop the sand user's magic, so you also won't be bonded to the Baka blonde. Kabuto breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. But he wasn't the only one who heard it. Neji had been flying around the castle, trying to see if Sasuke was alright when he had come to an open window and heard Orochimaru's plan. He hurried to tell the others. Well? Shikamaru asked when Neji landed next to him and Sai. Did you see Sasuke anywhere? No, but I heard Orochimaru making plans on destroying the her. Neji continued to tell them of Orochimaru's plan. Just as Neji finished explaining the evil plan, he started to feel white-hot pain explode through his body and started to feel his bones painfully reshaping themselves again. Then the pain stopped and Neji fainted from the pain. Back at the Kyuubi kingdom, the sun was just beginning to rise and Kakashi and Yondaime were sitting in the king's study trying to busy themselves with paperwork, so they would stop worrying about the prince and his friends. When Naruto and friends walked into the study, "Father, grab every massager bird we have and get all the servants as well, we have a busy day ahead of us." Naruto and the others explained about where Orochimaru had been hiding and what he had done to Sasuke and her new friends. Right, let's get to work, Yondaime said as he summoned all the servants and had them get everything ready. All the people in the kingdom were invited and the ballroom was cleaned and decorated, food was made and music was organized. When the sun was about to set, Kiba mounted his horse and started toward the old castle to retrieve the princess. Neji started to regain consciousness. His eyes opened to see Shikamaru and Sai looking down at him. Did Kabuto's magic wear off? He asked unintelligently. Well, your body changed back but your brain is still as good as a duck's, was Sai's spiteful remark. Neji looked at his hands and started to touch his face. After making sure that everything was where it was meant to be, he started to jump up and down, laughing like a man who had struck gold. Don't start to celebrate yet, Shikamaru said sadly. How are we going to get word to Prince Naruto about Orochimaru's plan now? None of us would be able to make it in time to tell him. Neji's face darkened with sadness, then the sadness turned into determination. We'll have to break Sasuke out, so she can fly there herself and stop the prince from making the biggest mistake of his life. And just how do we break her out? Sai asked, sounding doubtful. Neji gave the turtle and frog a bashful look and said, well, I had hoped Shikamaru had thought of something. The turtle and frog just shook their heads and sighed. In the end they decided that the best plan of action would be to wait until Orochimaru and Kabuto left and then break into the castle and find where Orochimaru locked Sasuke away, then get her out. Simple but hopefully effective. Inside the old castle, Orochimaru walked down into the castle's underground dungeon. He walked past cell after cell until he came to the last cell in the hall. Inside was a dirty and beaten-looking black swan. The swan was sitting in the far corner of the cell and had its head hidden under its wing. Now Sasuke, no need to look so mournful. Orochimaru smirked evilly. Sasuke didn't seem to even acknowledge Orochimaru's presence, but if he had been able to see your face he would have seen the tear that escaped. I know you're angry with me for not letting you go to your little party, but I know how I can make it up to you, Orochimaru said like he was talking to his own child. Sasuke still didn't acknowledge him, but when she heard the next bit her head shot up. I can make it up to you by letting you see your friend that came to get you earlier. Just then Kabuto showed up behind Orochimaru, pushing a bound and struggling Kiba toward the cell. Orochimaru opened the cell door and Kabuto gave Kiba one final push into the cell and the door slammed shut. Kiba fell to the floor and Sasuke got up and started to break the ropes bounding Kiba's hands behind his back with her bill. After Sasuke had freed Kiba's hands, Kiba pulled the cloth gag out of his mouth. Sasuke, are you okay? He asked as he pulled the swan to his chest. Yes, are you? She asked back as she snuggled into her friend's chest. Yeah, well, enjoy each other's company, we must be going now, Orochimaru said as he walked away. Sai was sitting at the front entrance of the old castle, waiting to see Orochimaru and Kabuto leave. Being a little frog, he was the best one of his friends for the job, and it worked. When Orochimaru and Kabuto left, they didn't see the little frog watch them go. Sai hopped away as quickly as he could to tell the others it was time to start the plan. They all adventured into the old castle and looked in every room until they come to an old heavy steel door that led to an underground dungeon. Sasuke, are you here? Shikamaru yelled. Shikamaru? Come, the little voice at the end of the hall of cells. Sasuke. Neji, Shikamaru and Sai yelled as one and ran toward the cell holding Sasuke and Kiba, while Neji held Shikamaru and ran with the turtle in his hands. Thank God we found you, Neji said happily. Neji, you're back to normal, Sasuke stated happily. No time for small talk, Shikamaru said. We have to get you out before it's too late. As Neji and Kiba worked on picking the lock, Shikamaru and Sai told Sasuke of Orochimaru's plan. Neji and Kiba had just finished picking the lock when Shikamaru and Sai finished telling Sasuke the evil plan. Go Sasuke, go! Kiba shouted as he opened the cell door, and Sasuke wasted no time in flying out of the old castle and speeding toward the Kyuubi kingdom. Naruto and Gaara were walking around the ballroom, greeting the guests and waiting for Sasuke and Kiba to show up. Kakashi was dancing with Iruka and being slapped every so often for trying to grope his dance partner. Temari was flirting with a royal guard and Yondaime was drinking wine with some good-looking women. They should have been here by now, Naruto said worriedly as he looked for the millionth time at the doors. They will be here soon. Gaara was getting sick of the prince's worrying, and being around all these people was not helping the redhead's mood at all. Just then the doors opened to reveal Sasuke and Kiba. All the guests gasped, thinking that the princess was still missing. Sasuke and Kiba walked toward Naruto and Gaara. When Sasuke reached Naruto, Naruto took her small hand and said, I was so worried that. Sasuke placed a finger on the prince's lips, stopping him. Nothing was going to keep me away. Naruto nodded and clicked his fingers and music started to play and they started to dance. Gaara only looked on and couldn't help but feel something was off about not only Sasuke but Kiba too. They were both acting normal, but still something inside of him was warning him that something was most defiantly off. Sasuke felt like her lungs were going to burst and her wings were straining with the pace she was forcing upon them, but still she forced herself to move faster, and what would normally have been a 2-hour flight turned into an hour and 10 minutes, as she could see the castle ahead. As Naruto and the fake Sasuke danced, Naruto himself felt that something was different about Sasuke. Kabuto was getting sick of this whole dancing thing. They'd been dancing for almost over an hour. "Naruto, could we start the bonding now?" Kabuto whispered in Naruto's ear. "Yes, okay, but something about you seems different," Naruto said, eyeing Kabuto. Kabuto started to get worried that Naruto could see through his master's magic and started to play with Sasuke's silver dragon necklace. "Well, I was captured by a madman for more than a week." "Yes, I'm sorry, it must have been hard on you," Naruto said sadly as he started to play with the necklace as well. "But don't worry, everything will be fine now." "Gaara," Naruto yelled over the crowd at the redhead, who looked over at the blonde. "Are you ready to start?" Gaara only nodded. Sasuke just made it to the castle ballroom window in time to see Naruto and the faker stand in front of Gaara, who started the bonding by telling Naruto the words he had to say. "Tonight I'm here to give my body and soul to this woman." Even with these words alone, the real Sasuke started to feel the pull of the curse on her life force. In a panic, Sasuke started to hit the window with her bill and yelled, "No, Naruto, it's a trick." But Naruto continued to spec, "May I forever be with her." By now Sasuke had tried almost all the windows, but Naruto was looking at the fake Sasuke and didn't see the panicking Swan flying madly around the castle. "I make a vow of forever lasting love, Naruto," was all Sasuke could do. "To this woman in front of me. No." Sasuke was now pain as the curse started to drain her of her energy. She did the only thing her pained mind could think of, and that was getting back to her friends at the lake. In the ballroom, everyone started to rejoice, but it was short-lived as Kiba started to glow purple and change form. His tanned skin turned pale, his brown hair turning black and his brown eyes turned gold. Then there before everyone stood a laughing Orochimaru. Naruto stepped forward. "Who are you?" After all, he had never seen Orochimaru before. "Gave your love to another. Sasuke will be upset." Orochimaru chuckled. "What are you talking about? This is Sasuke," Naruto angrily said as he pointed toward the fake Sasuke. "No, no, no, Sasuke is mine," Orochimaru said in a crazy manner. "You're Orochimaru," Naruto said as it hit him. "You have no power over her now. I've made a love bonding vow in front of the whole kingdom." Orochimaru only laughed in the prince's face. "You made a vow, all right, and it has sealed Sasuke's death." With that said, Orochimaru shot Kabuto with a magic ball, and everyone was horrified to see Sasuke turn into Kabuto, none more so than Naruto. "You should have just let me have her, and now Sasuke will die," Orochimaru stated as he pointed to a window. Naruto turned to see a black swan flying away through the window. "Sasuke." Naruto ran out of the castle and to the stables where he mounted his horse, who he had already saddled in case Kiba hadn't come back with Sasuke, and rode after the swan. Yondaime, Kakashi, Gaara and Temari followed but had to saddle their horses. Even as Naruto rode away from the castle, he could still hear Orochimaru's evil laughter and heard him say, "She's fading fast, little prince." "You bastard," Naruto yelled back at the voice and urged his horse to move faster. Up in the air, Sasuke could feel her energy leaving her and was finding it harder and harder to catch her breath. Back at the lake, Kiba and the others were looking around the old castle for Kiba's bow and arrows that had been taken from him when he was captured, when they heard Orochimaru's laughter all around them. "Something's gone wrong," Neji said. Naruto was getting frustrated. The forest was getting too thick for his horse, so he demounted and started to run after Sasuke. "If you hurry, little prince, you might be able to see her one last time," said Orochimaru's voice, but Naruto ignored him, his mind set on reaching Sasuke before it was too late. Neji, Shikamaru and Sai were out by the lake seeing if they could see any sign of Sasuke or even Orochimaru. Kiba was still inside the castle looking for his bow and arrows. "There!" Sai cried out and pointed toward the sky. They all looked up and saw Sasuke slowly making her way toward the lake. She was gliding more than flying now, too weak to move her wings properly. "She doesn't look too good," Neji stated worriedly. "Oh, Sasuke," Shikamaru said sadly. Sasuke was now trying to stay conscious long enough to land but still would have landed face first into the ground had Neji not caught her. Just as Neji lowered her to the ground, she changed back to her human form. They all gasped as they saw what her swan form hid from their eyes. Sasuke's beautiful pale skin was mirrored with nasty dark bruises from Orochimaru beating her. Naruto made it to the lake in time to see Sasuke transform back into a human and was horrified to see all her poor face and body had been through, but right now he was too worried about her being alive to get angry about it. Sasuke? Neji, Shikamaru and Sai backed away to let Naruto take the lifeless body into his arms. Sasuke, you can't die. Naruto shocked her gently, trying to get a response out of her. The vowel I made was for you, Danmid. Naruto? Naruto looked down and hope rose in his chest as he saw Sasuke's eyes open a little. Yes Sasuke, I hear. Naruto, I feel so tired. Sasuke started to close her eyes again. No, Sasuke didn't close your eyes. He cried desperately. I'm so sorry. The vowel was for you, it was for you. Tears started to fall down Naruto's tanned cheeks. I know. Sasuke smiled. I love you. With that, Sasuke went totally limp in Naruto's strong arms and Naruto could have sworn that he felt her soul leave her body. No, no, no. Naruto yelled so loudly that the crying Neji, Shikamaru and Sai all jumped back. Really, there is no need to shout. Come, Orochimaru's calm voice from behind Naruto. Naruto turned angrily and saw Orochimaru smirking behind him. His anger blinding him, he leapt up and grabbed the front of Orochimaru's dark robes and yelled, "Don't you let her die." Orochimaru just asked mockingly, "Is that a threat? Don't you dare let her die." Naruto's anger rose. "Oh, I think that was a threat. You're the only one who has the power to do it, now do it." Naruto yelled. Orochimaru just pushed Naruto back and said calmly, "The only way to save her is to defeat me." With that, Orochimaru started to glow red and his body started to grow and become scaly. Naruto could only stand there and watch as Orochimaru turned into a 20-foot purple snake. Dear God! He gasped and drew his sword. Orochimaru started to try and wipe the blonde price with his tail, but Naruto was able to dodge the snake tail and even cut the end off with his sword. Orochimaru roared in pain and Naruto smirked. This is going to be too easy. But Naruto's cockiness got him hit by Orochimaru's tail. The force of the blow sent Naruto into a tree, his sword fell from his hands and slid away. Recovering from the blow, Naruto ran after the sword, but Orochimaru saw what he was doing and was able to catch Naruto with his tail, lifting the blonde off the ground and squeezing him. Naruto started to find it hard to breathe and the tail was only squeezing him harder, so he did the only thing he could think of, he bit down hard on the scaly tail. It worked. Orochimaru him go and roared in pain again. While Orochimaru nursed his tail for the moment, Naruto was able to reach his sword and attack again, but Orochimaru was quick to recover and wiped the sword out of Naruto's hands with his tail, sending the sword far out of Naruto's reach. But what Orochimaru didn't realize was that he sent the sword toward Neji, Shikamaru and Sai, and he also didn't realize that Kiba had found his bow and arrows and had come outside the castle in time to see Naruto lose his sword and see Orochimaru knock the blonde to the ground. Kiba wasted no time when he saw Orochimaru was about to make a final blow and knotted an arrow in his bow and released it. The arrow hit Orochimaru in the stomach, making him fall back in pain. As this happened, Neji grabbed the sword. "Naruto!" He yelled to get Naruto's attention as he threw the sword at the prince. Naruto caught the sword and without a second thought stabbed Orochimaru in the head as the snake went to strike the prince with his fangs. The sword sliced through Orochimaru's head like butter and Orochimaru died instantly. The curse he corseted on Shikamaru broke and the turtle started to turn into a human with dark eyes and dark hair that was tied in a pineapple shape. At first he was shocked, but then he started to jump and dance around with an overjoyed Neji. Sai sat back and watched bitterly, yet he was happy for his friend. Little did he know that he had changed back into a raven-haired and dark-eyed human, because when Orochimaru died all his magic died with him, but when Sai finally realized that he was human too, he couldn't celebrate it because they all saw that Naruto was sitting next to Sasuke's still lifeless body trying to get her to wake up. "Come on Sasuke, we've killed the bastard, wake up." Tears started to fall from Naruto's sapphire eyes again and falling on Sasuke's cheek. Kiba waked over to Naruto and placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder. Naruto looked up at his friend and cried, "Why won't she wake up?" Kiba was about to reply when they heard, "Dobi, don't ask stupid questions." They all looked over to see Sasuke smiling up at Naruto. She looked tired and like she had been through hell and back, but she was alive. 3 months later and church bells were ringing as Naruto and Sasuke exited the Kyuubi church arm in arm, having just finishing their wedding vows. And they were not the only ones. Shikamaru and Temari were right behind them, having found love with each other after Shikamaru turned back into a human. And so they all lived happily ever after. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.